Hello everyone, this is Svetlana. Thank you so much for stopping by. In today's video, I will be making two cards pulling off BOGO deal. When I say BOGO, I mean this buy one get one free term. I'm gonna talk about this a bit later in the video. But first let me introduce the main player of this video, which is the Altenew watercolor markers set. The set has 10 markers of basic colors from Altenew color family. This is a new product from Altenew, and this video actually is a part of this marker's release blog hub. That's how a marker looks. It has a brush tip and a squeezable body filled with liquid watercolor. The watercolor flows very easily from the brush. You can use it like this to do watercoloring or maybe brush lettering if you are into it, or you can put some color down using a marker and then blend it out with clear water. For some reason I decided to grab like the smallest stripe of paper in the world to demonstrate how the marker works. And now I'm trying to fit everything onto this small stripe. When you first receive markers in the packaging, they all come with protective rings. You need to remove a ring from a marker and then squeeze its body a bit until you see the color going. After that, you don't need to squeeze the body when you work with a marker. As you can see, the liquid comes out of it with no effort. In fact, I wouldn't recommend squeezing it unless you want to get more liquid out of a marker at a time. First, I will be making a watercolor background. I want to make kind of a rainbow background, so I choose markers which would make a rainbow. I also made a panel out of watercolor paper and secured it to a board. First, I'm applying generous amount of water to the panel, and then I'm adding a bit of each color to it. I'm adding them in the rainbow order. I also am helping the liquid run and colors mix using a water brush with clear water in the areas where I feel that I need a little bit more movement. You may notice that sometimes I dip my water brush with water in it into a bowl with clear water. I do this to rinse the brush from the previous color. I also use the clear water to soften edges of the background. As I go, a part of my panel is drying out, so I'm adding more clear water to those areas in order for the watercolor to move better. You can see that sometimes I do squeeze a marker body. I'm doing this to get more liquid from the marker. Since I'm making a background and the more liquid is out, the faster I make the background. But as I mentioned before, if you just coloring an image with these markers, I wouldn't recommend you squeezing them, as you can end up with a big blob of watercolor liquid came out of a marker and can ruin your project. After I made the first layer of the background, I'm adding more color to the areas which I feel need more color. In my case, this means to make the background as bolder as possible. I tend to run darker and deeper in my projects. Okay, I finished making the background and let it dry completely. Next, I will be cutting out of it using dies from the Rose Flores 3D die set. This set is a layered one. In other words, you can use its die cuts to get very interesting and wow looking 3D flowers. But the dies from this set can be used on their own too. They just look more or less sketchy, but totally can be used for not layering purposes. I've chosen several dies from the set which have the more recognizable shapes. They also have different sizes. And I already made die cuts using these dies out of the same watercolor paper. I'm using these die cuts to plan out the areas I want to cut out of this panel. Next, I'm taking a picture with my phone, which I will be referring to when do die cutting. And now I will go ahead and start die cutting all elements from the panel. Okay, here it's very important to save all those small inside pieces of the cuts, as they all will be used in the card later. As they are quite small, it can be hard to differentiate one from another if dump all them together. So I will be using one of my recent cards as a sorting station, so to speak. I used the recently released Tuxedo washer tape from Altenew to make the background for this card, and these squares really help to keep these small pieces separately. And while I'm decutting, let's talk about this BOGO deal that I mentioned before. You all probably had situations when, after making one card, you have leftovers enough to make another card. I most often have some good negative or positive decks left, which totally qualify for another card. Or you can make a background and use a part of it for a card and have another part left that can make one more card too. I used to save all such pieces for later, and this later never ever came. Like literally, I didn't use any such leftovers later. So recently I made a rule for myself to make the second card right away, and usually it doesn't take so much more time to make the second card. So this process I call Boga deal. In this case, I knew from the very beginning that I would get positive die cuts and can make one more card with them. Here I realized that I want to add a small element to a couple of spots as they look too empty, and I will be using this small leaf die for this. Okay, my die cutting is finished, and now I will be assembling the first card. I will be making die cutting layer here. So first I'm applying a good amount of tape adhesive using Altenew Tape Runner and adhering the panel on top. Next I'm inserting white die cuts into their corresponding negative spaces. They inlay perfectly and I already have the adhesive down, so don't need to worry about adhering each piece separately. Next, for each die cut, I'm gonna insert these small color pieces in. This task looks very tedious, but it's really not. It's rather therapeutic and very satisfying. After inserting small pieces inside of an element, I'm smoothing everything down using my Teflon bond folder. As you may guess, for my second card I will be using the positive die cuts, which I will be adhering onto a white card base. I wanted to pop up all of them using foam adhesive, but some die cuts are too intricate to bother, so instead I'm adhering some of them flat and some popping up. And I'm trying to alternate, so the elements which are located next one to another are adhered on different levels. After I adhered all the cuts, I didn't like this card at all. There is too much empty space between elements and it looks kind of weird. So here you see me looking at it and recalling the previous footage I made. I'm thinking if it can be used to just showcase the first card and cut out any mentioning of the second one. But before completely discarding the second card, I decided to try solving the situation by adding some black splatters. And you know, splatters is always a good idea. They work every single time. So I actually was able to save the card by adding them. To finish off the first card, I've added a sentiment, white embossed on black, and several onyx crystals. As far as the second card goes, here I added the same sentiment 4 times to add a bit more interest and to fill more those empty spaces. And that would be it for today. Thank you for stopping by, and I see you in the next video. Bye.